us. She's nominated for the fourth time at the Golden Globes this year, this time for Best Drama Actress for Saltburn as Elspeth, ROSAMUND PIKE. So my first question is about Oliver. Okay. Okay, Farley, I know you're probably probably a bit shrewd about Oliver, but for both of you, he's a Svengali. Okay? Can you talk about that? How do your characters let him in? Because there's this innocence to open your hearts, because he's less than. But at the same time, he's part of your undoing. Can you talk about that? Basically,
we can talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
You have to remember about the British upper classes that they're not very good at emotion or dealing with their own family. So it's very helpful to have a house guest or an outsider who can come in and deflect attention, particularly for a character like mine, Elspeth. She finds it much easier to engage on a superficial level with a stranger than she does with her own children. I mean, I don't actually think Alison and I share a single exchange in the course of this film. I only talk about her, which is interesting for a maternal figure. And Oliver is a welcome distraction, and we needed one because, frankly, poor dear Pamela was getting a bit tiresome. So, somebody with a, nice peppering of misfortune and, a healthy dose of kind of tragedy following in their wake is perfect. Will definitely pass the summer very nicely in their company.
I think it's people as well who kind of have everything or want for nothing in a lot of ways. They get bored very easily. So, and we see that with poor dear Pamela, like people come to the house and you've heard of a series of strings of different friends of Felix's, and then they're just not interesting anymore and they just get discarded. And so he's just the new thing. And then obviously is different to anyone they've ever had.
And then I think that is Farley's fear, as not being a part of the immediate family. He's not a son, and so he's living in constant fear that he could just be discarded because he knows exactly what that feeling is, and so that's the initial reluctance with Oliver. Is there's probably not room for the both of us, so I've got to push you away. But the thing that draws him in kind of seductively is the power play of, that's the thing that he gets. Whether or not he's really into it is a debate, but yeah, that's what he kind of gets off on.
As far as, how does Emerald prep her actors? Like, what type of atmosphere does she create on set? Do you have rehearsal? Does she like spontaneity?
Emerald's an amazing collaborator. She fosters a really trust-based set where, she's not saying she's got all the answers. She's not expecting us to have all the answers. She's just enabling a space for play. She's incredibly enthusiastic. And, she's been waiting to see these characters come to life. I think she's talked about it. The characters of Saltburn have almost predated the characters in Promising Young Woman. She's been thinking about these characters for years. I think she thought about writing Saltburn as a novel. So, sometimes it would be kind of exhilarating to hear her giggling behind the monitor because she, and then the sound department say, shh, but it's, for us, it's really gratifying, because she's so enthused. I would say trust, ability to play and, very generous as a director. And I've never been on a set where everybody, from the people doing the greens, building the plants of the maze, to the best boy, to the fireman who's there to, in case that house goes up in flames, have been on board because it's her vision and that's what they want to support.
She has a really brilliant process in rehearsals as well. She does this thing where you do the read through, she listens, you then have a few days or a couple of weeks really, we had to read through the scenes and talk about them. And as you're doing that, she's making notes and she watches what happens in the room, because I think, she knows this because she's a brilliant director but also a brilliant actor. She knows that actors create something, that is unspoken. So she's watching then what we bring to the text, and then she's rewriting around that. So many key scenes in the film didn't exist in the original script. So huge scenes that you would have thought always existed, maybe didn't come until days before we shot them.
Give us a name. Yeah, give us a name.
Me and Barry in the bedroom. That didn't come until maybe 2 or 3 days. These were my scenes, but at Farley's return at the Midsummer Night's Dream party.
Or her scenes would they might start in a certain way, but then because that trust is building, they will kind of evolve into something much bolder. But that can kind of only grow out of, or in the way that, we were speaking about this in terms of intimate scenes, she will never just say, you're doing this, or this is, it's how would we feel about, and it's a question, and it's a conversation, and a collaboration. And so a lot of scenes as well started in a way and then progressed through kind of collaborating with her on it and developing that trust. So she's totally, she's obviously written this script and she's lived with these characters for so long. But, you completely, she hands it over to you as well. And everything was constantly how much further can we push this, and how much more fun can we have, and what can we get out of this to make it the best version of what it could be. And that's a dream for an actor, and I think that definitely comes from her being an actor, knowing that you want to just give it that further push, and that might not be the one, that might not be the thing that you go with, but just always allowing yourself to go there and make mistakes and be weird, and it's all good because we're just trying to, make it the best it can be.
Can all of you talk more about the improvisation? I mean, well, first of all, when it comes to comedy, you play it straight. You never play for the joke. You have a lot of funny lines in the movie.
Elspeth takes herself very seriously. She's a very serious person in her own mind. Just a ridiculous one in everybody else's mind. I think Emerald had a lovely way of allowing us to improvise into every scene. So to do the preamble of, the scene that was breakfast, or the scene that was lunch, or, for instance, she knew she needed a kind of entrance segment of dialogue for Oliver to overhear as he enters the family drawing room for the first time. And it's the, excruciating thing of hearing oneself talked about. And she didn't write that. She kind of wanted Carrie and I to riff on whatever appalling things came into our heads, spurred by Farley feeding us with some story from Oxford that he'd heard about poor Oliver putting his fingers down his mother's throat, or, and Carrie and I just had to let our imaginations run riot and think of whatever was the most misguided, shallow, naive comment on the less fortunate that we could possibly think of. So
there's 15 different versions as well.
They need to release them. Honestly, I remember being in the other room when that scene was happening, and I was just at the monitor, and everyone was screaming. Everyone was literally on the floor, and every single one was completely different. And I remember sometimes everyone would kind of call out and kind of give little prompts of
go again with the dead baby. Babies that come out drunk. Like being in the Upright Citizens Brigade or here in LA, which I would dream of. No, it was lovely, and it allowed us. I think I don't think I'm the best improviser, but if I can, when I know who the person is who I'm playing, and I think Emerald had given us all such fiercely original characters that you sort of could play because you knew their framework. They with Elspeth, I just had to think what was the most self-centered approach to everything. Just whatever the story was, inject yourself right into the heart of it.
So when I was talking earlier about how he's a Svengali, I was thinking of your scene with Barry where he says you're so effing beautiful. It's like he gets to you. He melts you.
But he gets it wrong, actually.
Okay.
With that, it's interesting because one thing that Oliver does is Oliver knows what each character wants, and he feeds it to them. He gets it right with Venetia. He is kind of constantly kind of doing it to Felix in a way by making him feel like a better person. And with Elspeth, his first gamble is wrong. His first gamble is to think she wants to be considered beautiful or like a sexual object, and she definitely doesn't. She does want to be considered beautiful, but she doesn't want someone to flirt with her. She actually finds that very distasteful. So he tries again, and his second punt is right. She wants to be absolved from the guilt she's feeling about dismissing poor dear Pamela. She wants an excuse to make herself feel better, which is him saying, well, if any of the stories she told were true, I'm sure you saw it. And of course Elspeth had no idea, absolutely thought they were all true, and then she's given this wonderful out by the stranger to make herself feel better, so she says, oh yes, I did, absolutely. So he gets it right, but I think Elspeth is a curious one. There was a scene in the karaoke as well where Farley, because I think Farley is probably the cleverest person in the film.
He gets it wrong with Farley as well.
He gets it wrong, but there's a point where Farley kind of screws with Elspeth, which I don't think we ended up in the final cut. During the karaoke where he kind of does a sort of lap dance and she just can't stand it.
She's like almost vomiting. He's like I was on top of her and like crawling on her, and thank God, to be honest, thank God they cut it, because I had to sing Rent so many times. My voice was...
It was actually amazing. It was amazing.
And then at the end, you want Oliver to stay after Felix dies. And then you say, I'm sorry that you were cast out, out of Saltburn so quick. I didn't like the way that happened. What was it? What was it in the end with Oliver? With as far as, was he replacing Felix in her life?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I think Elspeth is just clinging to straws at that point, and she's not very intelligent, and she somehow has thought of him as a connection to Felix, yes. And the idea of being left alone with just her family is the most frightening thing, because it approaches something like a real feeling, which is something Elspeth has no experience of. The reason why when everybody comes into the maze and she's talking about lunch is because it's not that she doesn't feel, she's completely grief-stricken and devastated, but she's had to immediately bury it because I think she sees an abyss that would just suck her down like a succubus. So Oliver she's wrong about him, but she sees him as the only thing that's going to keep the family afloat. And then obviously James is way ahead of the game, as was Venetia. And James dismisses him and writes him the fat check, and Elspeth always feels that we still did wrong by a good person.
Alison, tell us about your mom's speech at the end. Approaching it, working with Barry.
Scene between Venetia and Oliver, which I guess in the final edit wasn't needed. there's no doubt it was an incredible scene because I watched it.
Yeah, I think I can completely understand why it wasn't in.
But it must have helped informed
Yes,
that bathtub one in
I
some
think
way.
so, because there was a level of intimacy or a kind of, I suppose, comfort towards Oliver in that scene that then completely shifts by the time she then has that moment with him in the bathtub.
To be the voice of Emerald, though, I do know that she always says she doesn't like talking about the scenes that are gone because they're gone for a reason.
Yeah.
And they're not the film.
Yeah.
Like, and because there's so many things that we brought up in these Q&As, and she's gone, no, it's not the film.
Yeah.
And like it's gone now. It's so interesting because you shoot them and they're a part of the story for you or a part of the journey, and then the film becomes, in the edit, it becomes a different thing, and then that exists as a separate thing. Just to say that because she's not here.
A very, very vulnerable position that is. You know, by that time I'd seen The Grave and I'd seen the scene with Farley, and I was sort of had the tube down my throat, and I thought, well, Barry, you know, here I am. You know, what you will. And you know, somebody in an interview said, "Was that you in the bed?" And I said, "Well, of course it was me." You know, because you're still an active scene partner to somebody, even if you're in a coma, your energy is still there. And you know, we were saying it was sort of almost like a duologue scene because, you know, the timing of Elspeth going was quite significant, you know, for Barry, I think. You know. And then there was, I remember the moment where he kind of decided to sort of mount the bed, and I thought, oh my gosh, what's about to happen now? And then he got the sheet, and he went with the sheet, and I thought, oh my god, it's going to be my pajamas. And of course, probably it wouldn't be, because we would have had an intimacy coordinator come in before, but it wasn't. But it was that, but he's that electric that you literally don't know what could happen, and you have to be down for it, whatever it is.
The Graveyard is an improvisation.
Yes.
That was not scripted.
No, that's just an extended take.
Huh?
Was it one take?
One take,
Yeah.
yeah. That is
Yeah.
not, that is the,
Yeah.
him crying at the grave, I think, was scripted. What happens
Right.
after is not.
So you see what I mean?
Saltburn.